everyone, and welcome to the Hope Report, your light in the darkness, brought to you by the Lindell Recovery Network. I am solo today. Melissa is not here today, and I've made it Casual Friday. As you can see, I'm rocking a t-shirt, which is not the norm, and I got these new hats in for PCM that I'm pretty pumped about. Says Colin will take this off and show you. It's this cami flex fit hat that it's a summer hat because of the mesh back, but I'm really digging it. I've been looking for something that had a different camo pattern than I don't really like the real tree stuff. So, I got this. So, but anyways, I'm going to be living in this hat. It's going to be walking around on its own, and I wanted to get it on camera before it became all nasty and sweat stained and covered with cow fur. We'll say cow fur and and the rest of it. So, it's Friday, happy Friday. And, I'm actually pretty excited about some stuff I got going on this weekend. I'm speaking at a men's conference, the Enter the Lion men's conference on Saturday, where we're going to be talking about how the Christian warrior identity is welcome in Christianity and embraced, and how it has been beaten out of us by the beta male mush church of this day, and how we need to get back to being strong men leading our families. This is, again, a men's conference, and as you guys know, you fix the men. My belief is you fix the men, you fix the families. You fix the families, you fix the churches. You fix the churches, you fix the community. You fix the community, you fix the cities. You fix the cities, you fix the states. You fix the states, you fix the country. You fix America, and holy smokes, post-millennialism is true, and the whole world turns back to God, and as the last nation becomes his footstool, Christ comes back. So that would not be a great one. That's part of the draw of post-millennialism, is it's so optimistic, and and I pray that that's true. Hey, Claudette, it's good to see you. And my mom is in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, which is just a little swim from Newfoundland. But welcome from Canada. It's good to see you here. I hope to have my mom visiting me here soon. She's missing the grandchildren, and B and Anya are quite the treat. Which brings me to a point I want to talk about. I absolutely bawled my eyes out the other day. My daughter B just crushes me sometimes. And I just wanted to, one, it was an affirmation that I am doing better than sometimes I think I am. But she just out of the blue walks up to me and says, Dada, I love you. You're a good boy. And I'm getting choked up just thinking about it now. But I'm like, holy smokes. How do I live up to that? And how does she think that? Because I know what's going on behind my eyelids, and I know what's going on in my head. And I'm like, well, that's all I want to be, is a good boy to her, and a good boy to her mom and Anya and everyone else, and most of all, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But I want to, again, give all credit to Jesus Christ for any success that I'm having, because I'm not a good boy. I try, but I'm a sinner. And God said even to think sin is sinning. Lusting after a woman is the same as cheating or having sex with her. Hating someone is the same as murdering them, right? And that battle is real, which is why, as we work through our sanctification, we learn to guard every thought. You need to be in control of that. And I got a little bit of confession to make. I was hanging out with a new friend of mine, new brother, and we had to go on a road trip. And we started listening to Christian music, which is pretty terrible, right? I mean, you try to find one or two things in a song that's good. You can only listen to Crowder so much for some complex music, and then you run out of his songs, and then you're trying to listen to Skillet, which is, if you're listening for like rock and roll or something a little bit edgier, and you get real bored of that really quick. And it starts you down memory lane, and you start playing music. First, you start choosing songs that don't have any cuss words in it, and you don't go back to your full on, like full satanic music. Like I didn't put on Slayer or any of that other stuff. But within the next 3 hours, I'm back to rocking out to some pretty hardcore stuff that I don't think Jesus would want me listening to. Now, none of it that I can think of was in 1000%. Nobody cussed out God or anything like that, or was saying God hates us all. But I slid right back into that, even as a pastor, even as someone who's been on this road for a bit now. It was so easy to step back into that. And it's because I miss the adrenaline of good music, and I miss that endorphin rush of being in the gym. Like my workouts in the gym now are horrible. It is like I'm a zombie in the gym. I just walk from piece of equipment to piece of equipment. I can't find anything that fires me up. All of it is hollow, terrible music. And the only time I get that power surge of strength is when maybe one of like 3 Christian songs comes on. The rest are like terrible. And I've been trying to channel, I've occasionally have successfully channeled sacrificing to the Lord and making that about him. And it's been with mixed success. So when God ripped my anger from me, my addiction, anger from me, and didn't replace it with anything, everything physically that I was taken with it. And, I was listening to a psychologist, a performance psychologist, and he was saying that dopamine, which is your primary reward drive and motivator in life physiologically, right? Meaning your life is seeking more dopamine hits. When you feel that emotional love towards your wife, the joyous one, that's dopamine. When you're winning a baseball game, that's dopamine you're getting. All those things you're getting is dopamine. And music is one of the biggest releasers of dopamine. And here I am in the gym, and I've got zero dopamine. I'm trying to listen to like motivational speeches to even walk from one machine to the rest, because I was I'm so lost in there. And you're talking about a guy who's been lifting since he was 13. And it's just a struggle. So please pray for me that I find some way to be able to get in there and actually look forward to workouts again, rather than going in there and just surviving them right now, just surviving them. So anyways, I ended up having to call that friend and repenting for leading him down a dark road, listening to some pretty terrible music. Again, not the worst of the worst, but still stuff I shouldn't have been listening to. And, I'm glad I turned back from putting on Marilyn Manson or any of those other things that are just, whatever. And then we ended on some high notes on the way back. But again, it just shows you that we're in a constant battle against ourselves, right? A lot of people want to blame the devil for everything, and a lot of it is you, right? A lot of it's your own sin, and it's calling you, and it's death to self and life for Christ, right? Well, that brings me to our next guest. Our next guest is a very dear friend of mine. I spend a lot of time with him. Um, and he's one of the nicest, best guys I know. He's got an amazing family, amazing wife, kids. And, in our attempt to, yeah, we've had some fantastic, way out there, you know, you know, testimonies on this show from gangsters who, killed people to all this other stuff. You know, um, and try to kill himself and on and on. I've had some, just some pretty fantastical stuff to, my wife Lauren is one of the more powerful testimonies we've had on this show because more people could relate to it. There wasn't the blood and guts. There wasn't the prostitution. There wasn't ODing 10 times. It was just struggle, which we all have, right? So I was thinking today when who I wanted to get on. One of the first people I thought of was Jason. So when Jason's a good friend of mine, he works with us in my security company, Trident Shield. He's a great dude, a great friend, a brother, and I want to bring him on here. So Jason, if you're ready to come on, give me a thumbs up. All right. Hope Report. Welcome, Jason Conway. Even though it's spelled Coneway, I called him Coneway for like 2 months.
More like 6, but we'll go with 2.
Yeah.
That's okay though. It's a built-in call screener. If someone calls me asking for,
I never thought about that, Jason
Conway or Sarah Coneway, right? I know that they probably don't know me, so I can have some fun with them.
That's great, man. So you are in what part of Texas? Frisco,
North Texas, right? Just west of Frisco, if you're familiar with the area. It's in a little town called Little Elm. It's actually the town of Little Elm, but we border Frisco. In fact, our kids are in the Frisco ISD, even though we reside in Little Elm. So the benefits of the school district and not quite as high of a tax rate as if we did live in Frisco.
Okay, and that's north of Dallas, correct?
It is. Yep. All
right.
Most people know where Plano is. It's a little bit north of that.
Okay, so tell us who the redeemed Jason is today, right? What are you doing today, every day? I kind of stole a little bit of your thunder saying that we work together, but who is Jason today now that he knows Jesus Christ and has been set free from struggles?
Mainly it's focusing on our 2 kids. Mm-hmm. You kind of touched on something when you were talking about B coming up to you and just out of the blue, kind of making your week with what she said.
Making my week made my life right there. Like,
right.
I was just a crush, like, being told you're a good boy. I don't know what Freudianism unleashed that on me, but I just freaking dissolved, like became a blob on the floor.
Maybe she was equating you to a dog or a pet. I don't know, but calling you a good boy. Yeah.
Well,
now, if she had a treat, that's a different story. You might want to talk to her.
Yeah, no, but she said, Mama's a good girl. Anya's a good girl. Odipup's a good boy. Valkyrie's a good girl. B's a good girl, but that is a good boy.
Yeah, but you're a good boy.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my God.
So yeah. Anyways. So, with us, it's just trying to raise good human beings. I mean, we were both lucky, Sarah and I. We came from whole, loving families. My family was admittedly a little bit more dysfunctional than hers. But all in all, we had a great upbringing, right? Our upbringing was, I wouldn't say on my side, I wouldn't say it was 100%, revolved around Jesus Christ and Christianity. It was
any church in your past? Like, did you go to church as a kid?
Christmas, we were more Easter? Like a CEO family. Christmas, Easter only kind of thing. Whether it be sports or other activities or just, for whatever reason, we weren't the most consistent churchgoers. But in fact, when I was thinking about this show today, I was reminded of some pretty interesting and heated arguments I used to have with my dad. And it was mainly me just trying to push his buttons now that I look back on it, but trying to shoot holes in religion as a kid. Right. And
did you learn that in school? Like, where did you learn that? Who was pushing on you that God was not true?
It was me. I was a very logical kid. You know, I looked at the world, you know, very much as a uneducated scientist. You know.
Okay. And where was this growing up? What part of town, country?
This was in Katy, Texas, just west of Houston.
Texas. Okay. So when, you know, again, I've never went to school in Texas. I only went to school in Massachusetts. So when it came time to, you know, how we got here, it was monkey talk. You know, we evolved from plankton to, you know, or amoeba to single cell amoebas all the way through dinosaurs, this, that, no mention of creationism. No, nothing. Was that taught in contrast in a conservative state like Texas?
No.
So you were indoctrinated slightly.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just like, I just want to say, you didn't just like wake up one day, you know, from the womb and say, God's not real. I believe in evolution. You were presented evolution as the only option in school.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you see how that works, guys?
Yeah.
You see how that works? That's how they get you. They teach you the default religion of the state, atheism, which has no meaning whatsoever. And then it comes in, it starts to become your own idea. And that's where it becomes so dangerous out there, and why, you know, educating your kids and taking an active role in your kids, whether it's through homeschool, after work, getting around time, mentoring them. Right? Meaning that it's, you know, some people can't send their kids to, or can't homeschool their kids. Some people can't afford private school. The only thing they have, because they're living on the fringes, is they have to send their kid to some pretty bad schools. And then those kids come home, they come home from work, and you got to make sure that time from that moment of contact when you come in, no matter how tired you are, that you are mentoring from that point forward.
Yeah.
So anyways, so you started to, at what point did you start to engage in, you know, button pushing / atheism debates with your dad?
I guess when I thought I had it all figured out, right?
So that was like what, 10, 13?
10 to 12, 14? Somewhere around there. Yeah. You know, when kids start to look around and actually think about stuff. Yeah, right. Yeah. But at the time, I thought I knew it all, right? It was all right there in front of me. But you know, without being able to have the benefit of you know, the life experiences that I have now, you know, my argument was pretty shallow, and I don't remember necessarily the specifics of what my argument was, and I don't even know if I necessarily believed it wholeheartedly. It was more just me being defiant, I think, as a kid.
Just a way to challenge your dad in a non-physical way.
Yeah, just making him earn it, I guess.
Yeah,
making him work for it. But you know, one of the things that he did say is, you know, that always stuck with me, and I always had a hard time arguing successfully after that. And that was, you know, when you look around, you see everything. You see the mountains, you see rocks, you see dirt, you see trees, you see animals. Like, you see all this stuff. You see this wonderful system that is in balance, and it seemingly doesn't require any maintenance from anybody. It's just been set in place, set in motion. Who did that? Mm-hmm. And I was just like, you know,
scientists would say random chaos, but I'm not going to make their argument for them. I think it's a very poor one, and they know it.
It is,
which is why they don't know. You know, they're now to the point they're believing in creators. More scientists are believing in creators. It's an undiscovered alien race now, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that's the predominant thing that's working its way through. We haven't proven aliens anywhere, but aliens are what's done it, because that's easier to say than God. Why isn't God an alien? The ultimate alien, which he is, because alien means different, not, you know, whatever. What's holy? Set apart, completely different. right? So,
Yeah,
you know,
unworldly.
exactly, right? It's so again, it's just a pretty unique way to look at it. And as a former atheist myself, you know, I couldn't answer that either. And then I would always try to shift the burden of proof on them.
Right.
And it's actually an equal burden of proof.
Well, and another thing he always said was the fact that we can't prove God exists is the biggest um, is the biggest indicator that he does,
Huh.
or something along those lines. And it was
Or
those two
disprove,
things.
was it that you couldn't disprove them?
Maybe, but
Because
it
no one can
was
disprove them, right? No one can disprove them. I mean, that
yeah,
no atheist will even try to attempt that.
yeah. But you know, at again, the purpose of me, you know, I don't know if I was necessarily atheist or not, but just you know, it's relevant because it always got me thinking about that kind of thing. And
Right.
you know, I always tried to live my life, you know, as a good person, as someone that, you know, if anyone anywhere was ever asked about me and their relationship with me, that they would be able to say that he was a genuine, decent guy. And you
Yep.
know, for a long time, that's what I thought Christianity was all about. You know,
Yep.
and it was, and my life was, you know, absent of really what it's all about, and that is the absolute faith in Jesus Christ as our Savior. And you know, that's kind of where it's at. I mean,
Right.
that's everything.
One of the things that was such a barrier to me being an atheist, particularly when I'm young, growing up and searching for answers, is I was raised around a ton of Christians. Well, they were Catholics. That's part of the problem. But they were no different than I am. They were doing the same stupid things I was doing. They weren't any more moral than I was. Many of them far less moral than I was.
Right.
And I had no example of a solid Christian that I could point to that was walking it out until I went in like the SEAL teams, right? Like I encountered my first mature, you know, born again Christian, you know, in Buds. It was my first time encountering someone who was calm in the storm because everyone else was just flailing around. I mean, in Boston, every other corner has a modern day castle that's a Catholic church, right? I mean, they're beautiful buildings everywhere. Granite was cheap, it was plentiful. So they made these awesome castles everywhere that are these Catholic places. But every time I went to them, they creeped me out. Like I was so creeped out about the Catholic Church. And I'm not here to beat up on Catholics. So if you're Catholic, please forgive me. I'm just saying that I've never
Well, that's
felt
your
further from
experience.
God. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
never
just your
felt further
experience.
from God. The priests were all really creepy and weird, right? Super. They weren't like men. And so, anyways, that was me. When so when did you start getting into trouble, right? So, and when I mean by trouble, you know, like when did you start going off the rails when you realized you might? When were you introduced to alcohol, drugs, all that stuff, and when, if and when did it get a hold of you?
Alcohol, I was introduced at a very early age. Um, you know, my parents used to have um, Dallas viewing parties with the neighbors.
Oh man, that's so funny. That takes me
Right.
back.
Yeah. Right. Who
Who
shot
shot
Jr.
JR?
And
Yeah.
yep. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you know, they were always blending up margaritas, and you know, I wanted to know how to make them, and so I just um, you know, and then from there it would evolve into me stealing a sip, or just, you know, just out of curiosity, maybe swiping a beer when no one was looking, and then take
Right.
it around the back of the garage, open it up,
Mhm.
take some, spit it out, and almost throw up, and make sure no one saw me do it, you know,
Right. Right.
and then take another sip, because you know that can't be how it, you know, how the adults do it. That's, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so but alcohol didn't really get a hold of me until probably I was old enough to drive. You know, I got that extra bit of freedom,
Yep.
started going to high school parties. I was a pretty early bloomer. I was one of the guys that could buy beer in high school pretty regularly.
Oh, you had that same beard.
Pretty much, a little less
Yeah.
white.
So, how old are you now, Jay, if you don't mind me asking?
44.
44. Yeah, man, you look older than me. Holy smokes.
Right? That's why I'm so far away. I don't want to get too close so you can see really how old I look.
So, all right. So, in our era, DUI wasn't even a thing. Like as kids, you got in your car, you got a buyer, and you drove around, and everyone was drinking and whatever, and then caught the jerk cops would pull you over and take your booze.
Right.
The good cops would look for drugs or something real and would leave your booze.
Right.
Right. And that was my experience anyways. So take us through high school. You're high school now, you're starting to drink. Any problems yet?
Yeah. I mean, the first time I ever got arrested was in high school for public intoxication, at a field party or, some sort of house party somewhere.
You were the guy passed out on the ground that they couldn't walk by?
Not usually. No, I was usually, I mean, I was pretty much the real life version of Frank the Tank. I mean, I was like the last man
That's what
standing.
I was going to ask you is I've never seen it, right? I mean, I've seen it with you when you present, but you have an entertainer personality type, class clown personality type. And I wondered, just like anger took a part of me when God took anger from me, which was my substance, right? My superpower.
Yeah.
When God took away alcohol from you, did you lose that part of your identity, the entertainer? Your inhibitions are gone, and now you can't be as crazy. You can't be Will Ferrell, Frank the Tank.
I felt that way pretty often early on. I'm not going to lie. That was probably the biggest mental struggle that I had once I did get sober was I felt a little bit like I did lose my identity.
You're fun. You're the fun guy, right? You were the fun guy.
I was the power drinker, man. Like I was team drinker. Like, if I would get to happy hour after work or whatever, and I would tell our waitress or bartender, whoever, if when you see the beer get below the top, not the top of the bottom label, but the very top neck label, you see space beneath that top label, bring me another one.
Boom. Yep.
Yeah. And so, I was Johnny Double Fist. I mean, whatever you want to call it. And it was never the first, or it was never the 10th or 12th beer that got me. It was the first one. Really? Right. Because that was the starting line. Right.
Yeah.
That's like the starting gun.
Run a marathon.
They're off.
And you were going to run a marathon, and the first sip was the starting gun, and you weren't coming off it until you were done.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, well, I got to go home sometime. Right. And I got to get up tomorrow morning and go to work. So I need to make the most of it now.
Right.
That was kind of my mentality.
Let's back up a little bit here. So you get arrested for the first time. What's that like, and what were the repercussions, and did that stop you from doing it?
Not really. It didn't stop me. I mean, it sucked. Having to call your parents in the middle of the night and have them come get you out of jail. I mean, yeah, there was some punishment there. But once the punishment was over, it was right back to the usual stuff. I mean, yes, I was probably a little bit more careful about not being arrested again now that I knew what it took, but it didn't stop me from drinking and partying, because that's who I was.
Yeah. It's just so interesting that when I talk to former alcoholics, my dad being one, my dad's dad being one, my dad's dad's dad, and then on this show, and Melissa and everyone else, says I used alcohol completely different. Now, I misused alcohol. Like my goal was to lower my inhibitions so I could go out there and talk to any girl on the planet, or be the funnest guy I could be.
Right.
But it was never about getting to, I didn't want to get to the point of pass out. I just wanted to get to this zone where my liquid courage was the highest.
Right.
Right. Where all my insecurities were gone.
See, I never saw that off ramp.
Yeah. For me, it was like, how do I get enough courage to go talk to the hottest girl in here?
Right.
Right. And then the gift of gab would just come from there. Right. And, so like I remember my routine at the height of my, when I would say, again, I never woke up and said I needed one. I never had a breakfast or beer, never any of that other stuff. It was 100% a accelerant or an enabler of an environment where my true thing was being liked.
Yeah, it was a personality modification.
Right. So,
Right.
I remember going over to Europe, and that's Red Bulls were not here in the US yet. And they had not made it to the US. So we were over there in Europe, and I would order 3 triple vodka Red Bulls. I would chug 2, and then I would sip on the other one because it would get me exactly where I wanted to be. And then all that caffeine would hit my system. And that's ridiculous, right? That's so destructive. It's so all those things. But I just never saw it the way you did. And I never understood the challenge to alcohol until I heard Jordan Peterson describe how dangerous and how, I mean, if you're addicted to alcohol and you don't drink it, you'll die.
Yeah. See, I
Right.
was lucky. I never reached the physical dependence on it. Right.
Okay.
It wasn't that I had to drink it every day.
Okay.
I mean, there were stretches where I would. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
it wasn't to get rid of the shakes or the DTs, whatever you want to call them. Right. There
Right.
was no physical dependency there. It was just I would use any opportunity, any downtime. It would be filled with alcohol, whether it was
Right.
spending the night here at the house doing nothing. You know.
Yeah, see, I always had to do it with a goal in mind, right? So for me,
There
you
always
know,
had to be a reason.
there had to be a reason for it, right?
Yeah.
I would never just have one. I didn't enjoy the taste. I mean, I didn't discover wine until I think I was 40 or something like that. So for me, it was always a magnifier of the time. But anyways, let's get back to you. So all right, so you get busted for, you get arrested, you got to go to your parents. So I mean, where is the next trouble that you run into?
Well, that would be college. You know,
So now you go to the pros, right? That's the pros is for drinking. That's college.
yeah. I mean,
That's the only thing professional about college is how much you drink.
yeah. I mean, I went to the University of North Texas up here in Denton, just barely north and west of where I am now, and went there on a partial scholarship for track and field as a discus thrower. While I was there, I threw discus, javelin, and hammer. And I only did it for about a year and a half, I think. And then I just decided, I kind of just bowed out because I wasn't really effective
Mm,
on the next level. I had a really, really good coach in high school that was absolutely phenomenal, and he was widely known as kind of like the godfather of the South Texas region
right,
field, and the event or the field events and throwing and all that. But
right.
in fact, he's the one that got me the scholarship. He came up to me one day in practice and said, "Conway, what are you doing for college?" And I said, "I don't know, coach." And he said, "Okay," and just kind of walked off. And I was like, "Okay, that was weird." About a week and a half later, he comes back. We hadn't talked about it since, and he's like, "Hey, I got you a scholarship if you want it." And it turns out that the head coach of the UNT track and field program at the time was a former track and field teammate of my coach's, who also went to UNT. And they stayed in touch. And so he just reached out on my behalf to the head coach at UNT and said, "Hey, I've got a kid here that's a great thrower, great kid." And so he offered me a partial scholarship, sight unseen. I had never even heard of at the time. Well, it had just changed from Texas. What was it called? Well, it wasn't North Texas.
It doesn't matter.
Wasn't.
Whatever it was
Yeah.
called
Anyway.
before that.
Yeah. And I'd never even heard of it, but I accepted sight unseen, and so it was a weird thing, but anyway, that's what got me to college, or at least to that particular one. And having that extra layer of freedom, I took full advantage of it, man. It was a pretty regular thing. I'm extremely lucky that I did not develop some sort of physical dependency to alcohol, given the
Did you
amount
find the
and frequency
athletes?
that I was drinking.
Did you find the athletes were some of the hardest drinkers, or were they squared away and were like, no, it's all about performance?
They were both, really. They were both. I mean, you could tell who the real partiers were versus the ones that were just there to kind of pretend like they were, just to save
Yeah.
face and fit in, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of those guys had a lot more to lose than I did. I was just there on a partial scholarship, and I was only in that program for a year and a half. Once I was
Right.
out, now there really was nothing kind
To
of
keep you.
tethering me to responsibility other than whether or not my parents would keep paying for my school.
So what about where's your faith at this point? I mean, now you've been given some intellect and you're an adult now. How are you, are you still more on the atheist train? Are you like
Probably,
Christian
yeah.
light? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I wasn't involved in any sort of faith-based church or activities in college. I still held firm to that, that belief or that thought that being a good Christian meant being just a good person, right?
right.
So I was still a lost soul, I guess you would say.
Okay. So you're out of, your scholarship. Now the straitjacket of performance is taken off to you. How long does it take you to burn in?
Well, I got arrested about 6 or 7 more times in
Six
college.
or seven more times for what? What were the charges?
It was either public intoxication or public urination or both.
Okay, so
I
public
mean, I got
intoxication, were you a fighter? Were you a mouthy
not really.
person, or were you just
No,
like falling down so they put you in the drunk tank?
I was the just the life of the party that got a little too
Yeah,
rowdy, a little too unbalanced, a little too belligerent. Not in a mean spirited way. Almost never. I just I had no stop sign.
you had no off button. Yeah.
Right.
So okay, so now you've racked up 7 arrests.
Hmm.
What like are you like? What's your dating life look like? Do you have a girlfriend? Is it just hookups at parties? Like, is there anyone there who is going to try to adult for you?
No, no,
Yeah.
no. It was just me and whatever friends I had.
Yeah.
And being being a so-called Frank the Tank, it has, I guess, its apparent upsides, but inevitably it ends up being a somewhat lonely existence because most people can't keep up with you,
Right.
right? And so some most people will grow tired of it pretty quick.
You mean like you're going streaking and you're the only one streaking?
Yeah, yeah. Like I
Like,
turn around and realize that I'm the only one doing whatever it is I'm
yeah.
doing.
What are you doing, honey? We're streaking.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's
Who's we?
there's my supposed friends back there pointing and laughing, saying, "Look, we got him to do it."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no, it's just you know, most of the people that I was friends with, they were a little bit more responsible with things like their grades and jobs and stuff like that. Whereas my number one focus was just having a good time. I mean, I honestly would probably have stayed in college another 5 years or more.
A Tommy boy.
Had it not been for me meeting Sarah.
Okay. So yeah, so what was your rock bottom? Or is that
Um,
or is there some time in between that and now where we're at?
there's a good bit of time in between me meeting Sarah.
Okay, how did
Uh,
that happen?
so we were just out at a bar with me and my friends, and one of my best friends in college. His name's Bruce. He went to high school with Sarah, and Sarah just happened to be in town from Georgia Tech that weekend, and she and Bruce, I guess, kept in touch loosely after school or after high school, and so he remembered that she was going to be in town, so he just uh, being the smart guy that he is, he remembered his or Sarah's parents' home phone number from high school. So he just called up and um, spoke with Sarah, whatever, invited her out, and so she decided to come out and hang out with us for a bit. And I'll never forget when I had just talked to Sarah on the phone, giving her directions how to get to the bar we were at on the square in downtown Denton. And I remember when she walked through the door, I had no idea what she looked like, mind you. But when she walked through the door, we were up on it's kind of the second story loft area where the pool tables were in the back of the bar. But it had a perfect shot. It was a very narrow bar, but very, very deep. And it had a perfect shot of the entryway, or a perfect view. And when she walked through the door, I remember looking over in between pool shots, and I thought to myself, "Ooh, I hope that's her." And sure enough, it was. And we were introduced. We started talking. We spent the entire night just hanging out, getting to know each other, talking. We played Golden Tee for hours. We went bar
Did
hopping.
Frank the Tank come out, or did you keep it under?
Yes and no. I mean, Frank came out, but I didn't tell anyone my last name.
Okay. Okay. So you didn't race to the finish line. You kept it even keel.
No. I wanted to get to know her and actually remember it.
Right. Okay.
Right.
All right. So that's your future wife. Take us from there.
So we exchanged numbers, and we started emailing.
Emailing.
Which
Wow, we're really going back in time.
Right. I mean, this would have
texting.
been 2000, I think.
So no texting.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't think texting was really a thing yet. It was just either. I mean, we didn't have pagers, thank goodness. That was already gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was either calling on the phone or emailing, and so that was actually one of the really good things about me and Sarah's relationship, is that we were forced to get to know each other remotely, and somewhat slowly, right? And we were able to be really candid with one another and get to know each other for who we really were, without the pressure of being in person, which was great. But
so she went back to college, and are you
yeah.
in college, or are you working now? Because
No, I'm still in college. And shortly after I met her, I had an opportunity to move out of Denton with one of my roommates who was moving to Arlington, Texas, which is about, I don't know, 35 miles away or something like that. But it was in his parents' old house where he grew up. It was an opportunity to live relatively rent-free, just kind of pick up my share of the utilities, because the house was already paid off, because that, again, they had lived there for years and years. So I took them up on it. And inevitably, or I guess looking back, or unbeknownst to me at the time, that was probably the best decision I ever made, because it forced me to, like, when I left the house, I was driving 35 miles or whatever it was just to get to campus. If I forgot something or whatever, or wasn't prepared, I couldn't just run back to my apartment or whatever, 2.5 miles away and then get back. I had to prepare. I had to leave for the day. And not to mention, it kind of took me out of the party scene quite a bit, right? Even I knew it wasn't a good idea to be Frank the Tank driving 35 miles on a freeway.
Right.
And so that is where, well, and not to mention, I mean, I was never the strongest student. I'm a smart guy, and I got by on my brain alone for a large portion of my school years, big time. I was a really smart C student, right? Because I wouldn't do the homework, I wouldn't put forth the effort, whatever. I would just skate by.
Just
and
show up and do the tests and score high enough to pass.
I'd ace the test and then still get a C or a B, because I just wouldn't do the homework or the lab assignments or whatever. But I actually made the dean's list at North Texas my last 2 semesters, just because I had a high enough GPA at that time. And that kind of tells the story right there. I had never made the dean's list prior to, never even thought about it. But I realized that if I wanted to have any chance with Sarah, I needed to get out of school. And by that time, she had come back in town. I think later that year, a month or two later, after we met, it was like Thanksgiving or something. one of the holidays. And so we went on our first real date. I took her to this local Mexican restaurant, and it's actually a pretty funny story. We were there. We had a great meal, great time, and again, we had been communicating on and off, like not on and off, pretty much every day, via email. And so seeing her, it was like old friends. And anyway, we get done with dinner, and I go to pay for the meal, and I just pull out this wad of cash, and I start peeling off these 20s. You ask Sarah now, and her thought was, well, dang, he's got some cash.
Money.
Yeah. Yeah. Little did she know that she was looking at my entire net worth. Yeah.
Oh,
I had gone to the ATM, and I tried to get X amount. It wouldn't let me. I would do $20 less. It wouldn't let me. $20 less. It wouldn't. And then finally I hit the jackpot, and I got low enough, and it let me withdraw. Right. Cause I was, I wanted to show her a good time, and we had a great time, but yeah, she thought she hit the jackpot. Little did she know that was the jackpot. So anyway,
it's like hitting the scratch ticket, and you get your 3 things, and you're like, oh man, what is that? What is that? It's $50.
$2.
Oh,
Yeah. I just paid for the scratch off. Great. So little funny story there, but, I mean, I knew really, really early on, that I loved her, and that she was who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And she felt the same. And, we weren't too shy about it. I mean, we got engaged, relatively quickly. I think we were engaged in less time from the time we met to engagement than we were engaged to being married. Right. The planning of the wedding or whatever, I think actually took longer than our relationship before we were engaged.
Did she know you were Frank the Tank, and that you'd have been arrested about 8 times already?
I mean, she knew that I like to drink, and she knew that I like to have a good time. And she did too. I mean, she was much more responsible with alcohol than I ever was. But I did a better job of not letting my true tendencies come out. And again, that was, I think, all part of my transformation. Me sort of growing up, in a sense, was that I didn't want to make a mistake and run her off. So that was kind of the beginning of the change.
Okay.
I still wasn't a saved soul, if you will. But that got me on the right path, right? That got me to graduate. That got me.
You had something you wanted. You were inspired by a woman to reach something better than what you currently were.
Right.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
So she graduates a semester before I do, because me being who I was, I had to take the extra semester victory lap. But I wasn't far behind. And then I moved to Houston to go to work with my dad selling life insurance. She got a job in Lexington, Kentucky, working for Lexmark. They manufacture printers and stuff like that. She was recruited from Georgia Tech as a mechanical engineer by Georgia Tech, and that's where she decided to go. And I was still in school while she had just started with Lexmark in Kentucky. Like I said, I graduated a little bit later than her, and I would occasionally I would reach out to my mom and be like, hey, I need some money. And she thought it was funny at the time, or strange, because I would ask for like $372. And she didn't realize at the time, but that was my flight. That was my round trip to go see Sarah.
Ticket. Yeah,
yep.
That was your plane ticket. Okay.
Yep. Anyway, so, but I'm on this path of trying to, actually graduate and be a little bit more responsible about doing it. Again, I'm not living in Denton where all the action is. I'm removed from it.
Right.
So I graduate. I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I just said, I'll just go do sales with my dad, selling insurance. I was living with him. I did that for about a year and a half or so, and then I had an opportunity to go to work for an old roommate of mine, actually the same roommate that I moved from Denton to Arlington with.
Okay.
He had started a business. It was called Palm Agent at the time, and it was way, way ahead of its time. Back when Palm Pilots had just come out, making
Okay.
it was a real estate. It was a realtor's tool to calculate,
Sure.
everything, all
Yeah.
like all closing costs down to the penny. Anyway, but I could do that job from anywhere, and so I moved to Kentucky to be with Sarah. We weren't quite engaged, or we were. I can't quite recall. Don't tell Sarah that. Um, but the drinking did continue, right? So
I was going to say, what usually somebody you're going to require some near miss to say I
right,
can't drink ever again. So where
right,
was your
right.
bottom?
So the rock bottom actually didn't occur until years later, when we were both living in Houston, or I'm
Are you
sorry,
married?
in Dallas, actually, here in Dallas. Yeah, we were married. We had Campbell at the time. We did not have Harrison yet, and I was working for a recruiting firm that I had started with in Houston. Worked there for a couple of years, 2-3 years, and then I had an opportunity to move up here to Dallas to open up their new office. I worked for that company for almost I think 7 or 8 years, something like that. But if there was ever a source of friction between me and Sarah, it was my drinking, right? I did a better job of keeping it under control, but it was always kind of lurking, right? Um, it was, happy hours, and I would find any excuse to join the guys at happy hour, whether it was, you know, I can look out my office window and see traffic is at a standstill. There's no point in me getting in that right now. So let me
Right.
just let that pass, and then
You
I'll
got
be
to
home.
butter up a client, whatever.
Yep, yep, yep. And so, and despite um, me driving impaired way more times than I would like to admit, um, I never really got it through my head, right? Until I did start drinking at work. I
Wow. Okay.
started I started drinking at work, not at the office, but during lunch.
Yep.
I would leave, and I would go pound some beers. And again, the the old uh, mentality of trying to get as much in as I could before I had to go back. So my my manager and my original manager, the one who hired me, one in Chicago, one in Houston, got wind of it, and they took it to the CEO. And the CEO, I mean, to the company's credit, they said, get down there, get him straight, get him help if he needs it, whatever. But this can't continue. And so they both flew in one morning. They confronted me about it. I got demoted. I kept my job, but that was like at 9:30 in the morning on that particular day. And they said, does Sarah know about this? And I said, absolutely not. She has no clue that I'm drinking at work. And they said, go home and tell her. And so they gave me the day off. I went home and just had it out with her. Just I laid all my cards on the table. She had absolutely no clue that I was doing that at work. I mean,
Wow.
how would she?
Right.
She felt, just understandably hurt, crushed, betrayed, um, let down, afraid,
Right.
and I, she. It was about a 2-hour talk that we had, just sitting on our living room floor, and I remember she said, "Well, we can't have alcohol in the house anymore." And I looked her dead in the face and I said, "No, no, that's you know, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to be sober, I can't hide from alcohol. I can't control what other people do around me, and that begins with you, right? My problem doesn't have to be yours,
Okay. So you
right?
did this a different way. It
Yeah,
sounds like you did it a different way than most, which is I'm not going to be around it at all. It's just I'm gonna have to have the willpower not to do it.
yeah, yeah. And so let's call that day one, right? Me
Okay.
having to go home. Day one, I mean, it was a rough several days. I mean, um, uh, I found out shortly after day one. We were talking, Sarah and me, and she had already decided that she wasn't going to have any more kids with me
Wow.
because I was so checked out on the weekends because I was so tired from being up until 2,
Yeah.
and then back at work at 6:30 or whatever, 7
Yeah.
o'clock, and then just over and over and over. So I was using weekends to recharge my batteries and just completely ignoring her and my new daughter Campbell. So she's like, you know what, I can't do this partially alone. So,
Right.
but she never told me that. I guess she was always hoping that I would figure it out. So that was rock bottom, right? And admittedly, like I said earlier, my rock bottom was incredibly shallow compared to a lot.
Right.
You
But
know,
still, you had to go home and let your wife know you had a problem. You've been hiding this problem from her.
yep,
She had already had to tell you that she didn't trust you enough to have more kids with you. And, that's a pretty rough place for a marriage to be in. So I wouldn't sell yourself short on how impactful that is. And, glory be to God that you didn't have to go any further.
that's exactly
Right.
my point. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
There was no, I'm glad you don't have any bodies where you ran over a kid or mangled somebody in a car wreck or,
or
you
myself.
know,
Yeah,
or, you put your wife in the hospital by beating her or, did something crazy with your kids. Thank God it was a soft landing like this, as soft
yep,
as you want to call this. Right.
yep.
All right. So you don't make everyone around you go cold turkey with you. Do you have any stumbles or was it
Nope.
100% success from go?
It was oddly enough. Well, okay. So from day one, I decided that I was going to do the AA thing, right? Um, and I was going to do the 90 days or 90 meetings in 90 days thing. And I was tracking. I was probably a week or two in, maybe 3. And I would either do my meetings before work or after because they had them all the time, right? And I'm the kind of guy that if I know my objective is X and X is here down the road, I want to succeed at X today, right?
Right. Right.
And
Patience
so,
isn't a virtue.
no, not at all. And I was really struggling with, how the heck am I going to be sober forever today? I can't do that. Like
Right.
I can't check
You're
a
looking
box
at, I
and say
can't do that
done.
forever. Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah,
And what happened when Frank the Tank gets pulled out? Like, who are you now?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
are you
Well,
like, there's two types of, well, there's not two, but two types of drunks that I think of are former drunks. The dry drunk, who's a miserable wretch, which was my grandfather
right.
on my father's side. He was an angry, bitter person because he couldn't drink anymore.
Yeah,
And then the people who get healing find a redeemed life and move on, and they're 10 times better than they used to be.
right, right. Um, I'd say I'm somewhere in between those. I mean, the fact that I felt like I lost part of my identity, that was hard. And
Mhm.
that's something that I eventually, um, I guess, accepted and processed, internally, um, you know, somewhere along the way. But, I told Sarah, on day one, when I went home and surprised her with this news, when she got up to go pour out all the alcohol in the house, and I told her not to. I don't know where these words came from, but they might have been some of the smartest I've ever spoken. And I said, look, in if I ever choose to drink from this point going forward, it is not going to be your fault or anything that you did. Actually, you know what? No, I take that back. These words that I'm about to say, or that I'm saying, these were in a in a conversation that we had probably a week or two after day one, where she felt like she didn't want to nag me about doing stuff around the house, or she didn't want to push me to drink, right? By somehow being
Right.
overbearing, or me thinking that she was nagging me or
She's
whatever. I mean,
walking on eggshells,
God
trying
bless
not
her.
to be
Yeah.
the source
Yeah.
that you don't stumble. Like she talks to you too hard, stresses you out, and that's what
Right.
causes you to fall. Right.
She didn't want to be the reason, right?
Sure.
And I don't know exactly how that came up, or what prompted us to get on that topic, but we did. And I told her flat out, I said, look, honey, if I ever choose to drink, it is because of my choice and my weakness in that moment, or my decision. Well, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything that you could ever do to me, right? That's
Right.
still my choice. And I think when I explained that to her, I think she believed me. I mean, I believed it.
Right.
And so, but I still had this problem. How do I stay sober forever today? How can
That's
I,
well
how can I,
said. How do I stay for? Yeah, that's where the whole one day at a time thing comes from. But when you're not that, then that's not your personality type. How do
well,
you?
I was committed to being sober. Like I had, but I just wanted to be sober forever today. Like I wanted to be able to say, okay, I'm done. Like I'm good. But like I said,
Well,
I
you
was
wanted your
never
wife to
physically
trust you
dependent.
again, right? You wanted your wife to trust you again. You want
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of us when we screw up, we want that forgiveness that instant, and it to be the consequences to be over that instant.
Right. Like that
Right.
old saying, once a man accept or admits that he's wrong, he should be forgiven instantly. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Right.
Maybe
Well, a lot
not.
of we want, hey, I'm sorry. I know you're crying and you've got gallons of tears. Let's turn the page. That's what when people, you typically they've done wrong or they mess up and they come to you and say, hey, I'm sorry. I need you to forgive me. You have to understand, I thought that's something that we had John Hickory on the other day from Break Every Chain.
Right.
And being around him during that time when him and his wife were reconciling, that was not a quick process.
Right.
Right. They were in it together, but you know what I'm saying? I think they did a good job in showing that trust is earned and that, it takes time for you to turn that page.
Right. Right.
So anyways, go ahead.
So, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I had been living this kind of lie and hiding it from the woman I loved, my wife, the mother of my daughter, for years. That's not something that can be forgotten very, very quickly. And so,
Right.
So anyway, I was still struggling with, how to be sober forever today. And, I was going to my meetings. I was doing great. I was tracking for my 90/90. Heard some amazing stories. Some of the realest people you'll ever meet are in AA rooms all across this country.
Can I
some of their
talk about that
stories
for
are,
a second?
yeah.
I remember when because my dad was a bad alcoholic, drug addict, all that stuff. And I remember going to his 20 year, his 25 year, his 30, whatever, these big coin years, whatever. And I was so blown away by the honesty and the vulnerability that people show in that room and the camaraderie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that I could see how powerful or how well that program did for such a long time, because there's this sense of belonging, right?
Yeah.
It's like joining a club. I mean, it's not a club that nobody wants to be in,
Right.
but you're joining a club and you have that camaraderie and that shared suffering and that shared commonality.
You've got sincerity.
Yes. Yeah. And then for the rest of us, until you become a Christian, which is AA was modeled after Christianity by a Christian.
Yep.
No matter how much they try to strip that from it, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Christians are very different. You come up, you meet someone, you give them your testimony, and it's the equivalent of, here's all my warts, here's all my scars. Do you want to deal with me after all that? Right. That's basically what we do as Christians. Here's my testimony, how Jesus set me free of this. Here's all this stuff. Here's all my flaws and all my weaknesses.
Yeah.
All right. Do you still want to be my friend? Right. Yeah. And that's very different than how we did it in the world before we were Christians. Right. Then it's about the mask and being, it's kind of like Instagram. You show everyone how successful you are, your best day, this, that, and it's all this illusion because
Right.
we're all just broken inside hopelessly. Right. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, I remember I was driving home from a meeting, an AA meeting after work one day. And the AA meeting location was just, a mile and a half from my house. So it wasn't a very long drive, but I was really, really struggling, right? With, I cannot, with the idea of continuing to go to these AA meetings and, just, how am I going to get past this, right? This feeling of, not being able to feel satisfied or complete unless I can be sober forever today. And I'll never forget it. I was driving home and I had a thought, and I literally,
Take it easy, man. You got it. Lean into it. It's all good.
I felt the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, because it was the first drink that got me, the idea of being a social drinker in some capacity was never an option.
Mm-hmm.
That was the fastest path back to being Frank the Tank plus some. When you relapse, you tend to do it harder and faster.
Yep.
And I knew that, and so that wasn't an option. But I realized the one thing that the Lord blessed me with was whether or not I chose to drink. And I felt this warm feeling just wash all over me.
Oh, I've been there, man. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that's when he gave me my shield. That's it.
All right. Awesome, man.
He reminded me that I had the power to choose whether or not I drank.
Right.
And even though I couldn't choose to not drink 4 years from now today, that I always had that power and that decision at my disposal.
Right.
And I mean, yes, it may sound silly for some who've never been in that situation. Like, well, yeah, dummy, you always had that in your pocket. But I never really thought of it in those terms, right? From that perspective. Once I thought of that, and I don't mean to make light of it because, addiction is a very serious thing and it's a lot worse for a lot more people, but I never looked back, man. That was it.
Well, you got set free. Now, here's the question that, like Melissa in her testimony, she'll say that she's never had another desire for a drink. I know that's not the case for a lot of people. I know people who've been set free who are like, yeah, I never wanted heroin again. And there are other people who are like, no, it's there. I just don't do it. Yeah. So how is it for you?
Honestly, and this is kind of strange, and I didn't realize this until later. Like, I'm the world's best connoisseur of non-alcoholic beers. Okay. I've tried them all. I know which ones are horse piss, and I know which ones are the best. Yeah. In my opinion, just for those out there that might be curious, oddly enough, the absolute best non-alcoholic beer I've ever found is Busch beer, non-alcoholic. It's got a little red band on the top of the can. I don't know if it comes in bottles. I've only found it in cans. Now, I don't know if that is a knock against regular Busch beer,
Yeah.
or if it's a compliment to Busch Brewery for being able to make a non-alcoholic taste so much like beer and be so convincing. But I drink those when I'm out grilling. If I come inside from working in the yard, or long day at a summer baseball tournament or something. I mean, they don't last long. They
Right.
never did.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's not something I sip on and enjoy. It's just just something that I do. But oddly enough, the thing that I miss the most is the taste of wine, red wine.
Okay.
That's it. So almost every time Sarah's got a glass of wine, red wine. I was never a fan of white, but I will walk by and I will take a huge sniff. And I'm waiting for one of these days for me to get strong enough lungs to actually get some of that wine up in my nose and back into my throat, and somehow taste it again. But but that's what I do. But I have not, thank Lord, I have not had a single drop of alcohol since. And ever since that car ride home.
How long ago was that?
It'll be 14 years in March.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. But ever since that car ride, heading
the
home
Holy
from the
Spirit
AA
came
meeting.
on you.
Yeah.
What? So
it has been.
Were you a Christian that day, or did you? When did you stumble into a church? Like, take us through that part of this.
It took a lot.
The Jesus part now, man.
It took a little bit longer. I mean, we were by that time. Sarah and I,
was your wife a Christian at that point?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, like
she always was.
A walk in and out, does grace, and you're just like, oh, here we go. Can I get my steak?
I mean, the fact that she stood by me and I mean, you can't forgive something like what I did as quickly and completely as she did without having or knowing what real grace is.
Yeah.
And having a desire to try and emulate that. That's to her testament. I mean, she's phenomenal. But yes, I mean,
did she walk you through?
We were going to church.
I was gonna say, like, so you have this moment with the Holy Spirit. Did you come home and tell her about it? Like, how did that go?
Yeah. I told her about it. It was not long after that, we actually moved from, at the time we were living in Dallas, very near my office. And then we eventually built the house that I'm in now up here in Little Elm. We had tried a whole bunch of churches in our area down in Dallas, found one that we kind of liked. But then we ended up moving shortly after. And it took us a while to find a church that we liked up north where we are. And then we found a church that we've been with for now, gosh, probably 12 years, maybe.
Okay.
So almost as long as I've been sober. It's called Stonebriar Community Church. Phenomenal pastor. It's very traditional with their music, with their messages, and we've loved it. But yeah, I mean, once I was able to reconcile things with Sarah, we ended up having Harrison not long after. And it's only because I got sober that I have a son. And
wow.
I'm just so thankful that I did.
Right.
And I'm just so thankful that I had Sarah to help me through this, because she never once doubted, not once.
Well, and that's what people, like, behind every great man there's a great woman, right? And
Damn right.
um, it's as for myself, I can only speak from my thing. You know, now when my body totally betrays me and I can't lead from the front, I can't do everything by example, and you know, it you know, it hurts to go get a cup of coffee in the morning, um being able to finding ways when I'm having bad days to still contribute in ways that Lauren can see is has been my challenge. Instead of it being the easy way where, yeah, I'm going out and making the money, I'm crashing, I'm learning from the front, I'm lifting all the heavy stuff. Well, there are days now where I can't do that.
Right.
Right. There are days where I can't take out the trash without crippling myself. And my wife has to go out there and do that. Right. And holy smokes, is that a blow to an alpha male?
Right.
Right. But the other day, Lauren, just the kids, just the stress of life, things that added up on her, and she was crumbling, and I had to, I was relieved to be able to step up. I was having a good day and fill in all the cracks,
Yeah.
right, and do all that stuff. And I'm like, listen, you know, just like me, you have to let me know before you break that you're bending, right? You're so strong, you're so this and that I need to know before it's a crisis so I can step in and help you.
Yeah. It's easy for onlookers to take that for granted and just assume that strength is always going to be there.
Right, but we all know that there's a strength is a resource that is not never ending,
Right.
right? Only God is never ending, right? So being able to, even when I'm down or I can't do it the way I want to, like you and I can be perfectionists at time, where if I can't do it 120%, well, I'm definitely not going to do it at 70%.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not just going to do it then. Right. And that is something I had to get out of the way of. And I had to say, sometimes every little bit that you can give um, really can help. And, um, having a balanced relationship where you guys are each taking turns holding each other up is the key.
Yeah. Well, I mean, through it all, I mean, I think the one thing that we've always had going for us as a couple is trust and respect. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. Like I trust her to do things that should be done. I trust her to love and honor me the same way that I love and honor her.
Yeah.
Right. But I also respect her as an individual to try and find whatever grace I need in certain situations to be the man that I should be to her and for her, and likewise. I mean, so you have that as a couple. That's strictly between me and her. Now, as far as parents, I think early on our only real objective with kids was, being honest with our kids, but when it came to our message, whether it be raising them, to be followers of Christ, whether it be discipline, whether it be really anything, is that we had to have a united and consistent message. That was it. That's the only thing that was that we really had control over. And I think that's been our sort of our saving grace as it relates to our relationship. Those two things.
Yeah. One of the things that I was just going through my quest for knowledge is I was listening to Jordan Peterson, and then it was a Dennis Prager thing that was overlapped, and it was on social media, and they were talking about divorce and things that you can't recover from, or things that are the hardest to recover from. And I think both of them agreed that infidelity you could get around, that you could survive that, but contempt you couldn't. Meaning that if someone thinks that you're worthless and despised and without value, that you can't come back from that.
Right.
And that's what you have to be on the lookout for in your in our relationships. But brother, I appreciate your story. I appreciate you coming on here. It's always hard to come on here and dump your soul to, shotgun it into the interwebs and
the worldwide interwebs.
Yeah, the worldwide interwebs, and to get emotional and all that. But I really think that your story, because it is more relatable, I think, to most than the knockdown, drag it out ones. And I think it can do a lot of good out there. And that's why I really wanted to get you on here.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk about it. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do. And
no, but it's, you're going to find every time you do it, you're going to feel better.
But I mean, I wouldn't be standing here right now if it wasn't, at least in part, because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's as much a part of who I am than anything else.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. So, you got people saying thanks for sharing in the comments. Well, I'll go ahead and pray us out real quick. It won't be a Melissa prayer. It'll be a Jason prayer, short and sweet. And we'll take it on home to the weekend. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this brother of mine who came on today and shared his history. His history his story is your, oh my God, I can't believe I'm messing this up in the middle of a prayer. That's what I get for this. So anyways, your history is his story, and using his suffering and his testimony to help others, Lord. Just so thankful for my brother here that he's come back from the edge, and that he has grateful for him. I pray for him and his kids. I pray that they would continue to be in the shelter of your protection, Lord, and that you would pull them to you and make them yours, that they would know your will for them, and you would send them out to do great and mighty things. Lord, I pray a prayer of protection over our congregation, our viewers here, and anyone who's hearing this, that you would speak into their lives, into their struggle, and that you would call them home. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen, man.
All right. So I can't believe I messed up that quote. I've said that quote about 1,000 times. Your history is his story. There you go. That's what I meant to say. Your history is his story. So that's
well, the problem is you got story twice.
Yeah.
One in history and one in
that's the
his story.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, all right, everyone. God bless you. Have a great weekend. And